Good morning, everyone. We're going to give it a couple of seconds so everyone can come on in. Good morning to you. Happy Wednesday. Good morning, Lori. How are you?
Hello there, Lauren. How are you doing? Look at our numbers are jumping today, man. This is
Hi.
awesome. I'm doing great. Doesn't it feel like it's fall? Is everybody feeling that way? I know we talked about the happy parents when the kids went back to school, but I just been noticing feeling like this brisk, the fall's coming. I grew up in upstate New York. I refer to being in the country in podunk land, right? But in the beautiful woods where all the trees would fall and the fall would change colors. So fall's always been one of my favorite seasons.
I love fall too. I mean, California is amazing, but of course, in Southern California, we don't really see
Right.
seasons. So I
Right.
miss that. It was cold though, or cooler, I should say, a few like last week, and then I think today is supposed to be 90, so it's all over the place.
Yeah, I guess that's I'm not in that area right now. And so I'm dealing with that right now. It's 57 and that's going to be my high. When I'm talking fall, everybody that's clicking in right now going, what is she talking about? I'm
I know.
sweating here. Okay, you're right. I gotta, this is what we call a difference in perception from where you're positioned. We call that in the marketplace, and it's also location. Well, Lauren, I think our numbers are settling in for right now. Why don't you just go ahead and take us away here?
Okay, will do. And who is that? Oh, Nancy Lynn. I agree. I love fall too. She just agrees with us, Lori.
Oh, I see it now. I see it in the chat. And of
The
course, Emma will be
colors.
showing up any minute now. So we got to wait for Emma. And I shouldn't go without saying thank you so much to our frequent flyers, as I call you guys. Thank you for being there every single week. And thank you so much for the new people on the show today. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Lori. With that, I will go ahead and share my screen and do a quick intro. For those who are new, for those of you who are frequent flyers, just sit on back. Lori will get started in just a second. So again, good morning to everyone. Welcome to Small Biz Talk, solutions for your small business. My name is Lauren Simpson and I'm with the SBDC. The SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center, is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country. We offer no cost services to local small businesses through funding. Um, and that funding is actually your tax dollars at work. So our resources are at no cost to you because of your tax dollars. So thank you very much. Um, for the Los Angeles network, we service the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And you can see our actual center locations on the map in front of you. You'll see that we're out in Santa Clarita, over to Pasadena, and all the way down to Long Beach, and of course in areas in between. So as long as you're in Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties, you can get connected with the LA network. Now, you'll want to do so because, as I mentioned, we offer no cost services. One of those services is no cost business advising. And so you're able to sit with one of our business experts. You might even get a chance to set an appointment with our guru of all numbers, Miss Lori Williams. But we have experts, our colleagues are experts in various topics from licensing and permitting, taxes, of course, marketing, business planning, honestly, you name it, and we've got it. And then we also offer virtual trainings, much like the training you have joined today. So again, we're here to help. Please be sure to get in contact with us to get started. You can reach out by phone, 866-588-7232, or you can go online, smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you've reached us outside of our service areas, so outside of the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties, you can go to americassbdc.org /find your SBDC, and someone will be able to get you connected with a local SBDC center. With that, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share. And quick housekeeping, Lori. So we want to make sure that everyone's putting their questions into the Q&A. Again, all questions into the Q&A. And then the chat will be reserved for any links and info that Lori would like to share with you. With that, Lori, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you. I'm excited for the show.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lauren. And to those who have reached out to Lauren to get in touch with me, I've had a great opportunity to have conversations with many of you. If you haven't heard back from us, I've followed up on all of them. So please send another email. You never know when it goes into the spam. Welcome to work with each and every one of you on any situation you have. Upcoming classes, I didn't take the October 7th and 18th off. I should have, but we're down to the 25th. Time just sometimes goes too quickly. Lauren's going to put this link. It's my last of the session 3, how to analyze your company's financials for better decision making. Although it's beneficial to take session 2 and session 3 together, you can always jump into one of the sessions. I will be repeating them. I believe, I haven't confirmed yet, but I will be repeating the 3 probably in November, but then I won't start again until maybe February. But one of the things I want to say is that the session 2, where I started with using kind of an Excel document and telling people what is the minimum financial calculations that they must do and must understand within their company, that one has turned out to be really good. It's a great one. So I do suggest that you get a hold of that one. And then I also added the legal structure seminar after having a lot of people confused about the difference between a sole prop and LLC in taxation, which there is none. S Corp, many of the rules around taxation and setting up the legal structures. So I went ahead and created a webinar specific to that. That's going to be put into the chat as well by Lauren, and that's actually coming up soon. Now, as far as upcoming, I should took off today. See, I'm a little bit behind on my dates. I thought I updated my dates, but I didn't know where I was today. But October 26th, which is next week, Abby, who has been on the show before, is coming back to discuss the new product that she spoke of when she was on the show. She just kind of showed us a prototype for it, and it's a special sob that is put on her furry friends, dogs specifically. Abby feels as though she hit the big one this time, and she took it from a different approach, from an aggressive cold calling, handling her own distribution, etc. And I told Abby she's got to come back on and update us. So she's coming on next week to tell us about that and some of the tricks of the trade that she's learned throughout this time. Jules Martinez, Hurst, is coming on, and she has a company that talks about how to handle any type of situation. And as small companies, we are constantly involved in everything from negotiations to have to deal with clients, vendors. And I like her line. It's not about being perfect. It's knowing what to do in any situation. And she specifically helps entrepreneurs on different situations that they're going to face. So she's going to share with us. Just added a new one to our lineup. November 16th, Barney Sanchez is coming on. I've been trying to get Barney to come on for so long, and so has Annie from Pasadena SBDC. Annie's probably in the audience, and it's with Annie's urging we got Barney to commit. Barney is just a very busy person. Now, he has been an advisor with the SBDC for a long time, but he's one of the visionaries and the actives behind the Boulevard Market, which is in downtown Montebello. And you might remember Sylvia Garcia was on just a bit ago, and Barney helped her launch and get into downtown Montebello. He's going to come and talk about all kinds of things, everything from successfully running a restaurant to what downtown Montebello is and some of the incubator programs that he started some time ago. So that's all upcoming things, pretty exciting shows that are coming. Now, today I'm really excited to have Jennifer on. Jennifer is the founder of Narrative Food. Narrative Food is a WBE woman-owned business and certified B Corp. We don't hear a lot about certified B Corp, and she'll share what that means. Narrative Food is also a member of 1% for the Planet. Now, for 12 years, the company's focus was farm to table home delivery across Southern California. And I have to say, personally, just hearing those words brings such happiness to my heart. Many people know my story. I always tell people I grew up on the country, Podunk, out in the middle of nowhere. I thought everybody got their food from their backyard, from their garden. I mean, we didn't really go to the grocery store. We got the eggs from the neighbor, and the neighbor Norby would butcher a cow when we needed meat. Okay, you're really seeing how Pona and I grew up. So just hearing farm to table home delivery is always touches my heart. But anyway, the business was fortunate to grow enormously during the pandemic, when so many Los Angelonians were locked down at home in a need of healthy food deliveries. Unfortunately, When the lockdown ended and customers joyously headed back to the local farmers market and grocery stores, Narrative Foods sales volume decreased substantially and failed to balance out the company's overheads, which had hugely increased to meet the pandemic volume. Now, I know many in the audience say, oh my God, that within itself is problematic. Well, I'm not going to tell any more of the story. I'm simply going to invite Jennifer to join us now and fill in the blanks. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here today with you
Yeah.
all.
Thank you so much for being here. I have to start out with the beginning of the company. Tell us about the origin. I saw throughout the last couple decades, more people talk about this type of company. How did you get started? What was your passion? Give us the story behind the story.
Well, there are a few different things that happened. I actually lived abroad in Europe for about 25 years, and people have a very different relationship to food. And even within the different countries, it's quite different. Like, when I lived in Paris, I went to all the different little shops and the farmers markets, and you get to know who's bringing you your food and all those things. And then in the UK, I was a drop-off point for a farm box. And my kids were very little. And at that point, I was like, oh, what about a box that also has, your eggs and your milk and your, meats and grains and all the things you need. And I wrote out a whole business plan for it. But then at that point, I was in England, and the winter was going to be a series of turnips and potatoes. My kids were little, and I was like, I put it in a drawer. And then we moved in 2008 to California. And my first thing was like, I walked into a supermarket and I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I was just like overwhelmed. And little by little, I started exploring, and I discovered the amazing farmers markets. And remember, this is 2008, so we're in the middle of this, economic crisis. And I suddenly thought, oh, that business plan that was in the drawer, this is a great place to do it. And I was really coming at it from more of an environmental and activist kind of point of view at that point, because I had been a screenwriter, and the last screenplay I'd written was about the founders of the Greenpeace Foundation and how they were going to announce ecology to the world through the Save the Whales campaign that they did. And I'd spent like a year in the brain of, these activists, and I was sort of in this place where I wanted to actually do something. And, in the context of the sort of Occupy movement and films like Food Inc. and all of that coming out, I was like, yeah, this is about occupying our food and opting out of big food and supporting our community and local growers and, organic practices, which are good for the soil, and even about like sitting around the table with your family and sharing that meal, which is such an important touch point every day for really checking in with everybody around good food. That's, so all of those factors kind of coalesced, and I thought, okay, let's just go for it. And I took the business plan out of the drawer and basically, pure force of will from there.
It's interesting growing up, and literally we went to the back of our yard and picked our food, and I just didn't have any understanding of how lucky I was. I had no concept. It was why, in fact, I can remember my mother baked the bread, and I was so embarrassed because my sandwiches didn't line up like the bought bread did, right? And it wasn't until I was older, and then living in California, that I realized I couldn't get the resources that I currently got in my childhood. And to me, I am just really particular about the food I eat. But it's funny because everybody says you're so disciplined, and they don't realize that it tastes different to me. I can taste the difference in an organic food. And so for me, it's just yuck, and it's not like I have to force myself. It's the discipline. And I also have to mention, because your story made me think about something else, and I should have thought about this right at the beginning, but it dawned on me. During the pandemic, I had the good fortune of staying for a couple months with some friends on a farm, and I joined their purchasing of a weekly box. They liked it long term, but then people said, yeah, I will do it for you for a month. And I got my own little box of organic and, farm food. So I was one of those those people that suddenly did what wasn't being done before.
Right.
So I gotta believe that on one hand, it was so exciting to see your sales increase, but on the other hand, it probably increased so much it was a little bit of an infrastructure nightmare. You had to suddenly, double up on things. So I want
Yeah.
to ask two different questions, Jennifer. I want to create an origin because it sounds so simple. You're just getting it from local farmers and taking it and delivering it. I got to believe that that is a logistics and relationship bit of a nightmare and a headache to make all that happen. And then I got to believe when the sales increased so much that you had to double on it and became even more of a nightmare. So I'm tying those questions together because I think they're one and the same. So take it from there. Tell us any part.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I have a good logistics brain because actually the complexity of sourcing like from so many small vendors is kind of insane. In the very beginning, when I started the company, I went out, we bought a refrigerated van. That was like my investment. And we would go up to Santa Barbara on Saturday morning, and I would pick up everything from all the different growers at the Santa Barbara Farmers Market, which I kind of preferred to some of the LA markets because a lot of the actual farmers were there. And it just felt a little bit more like my family. And so for many years, we would do that. We would fill up the van, drive it back down to LA to the commercial kitchen warehouse place that I had, fill up all the boxes, and then deliver them. But, there were always challenges. Like, do you remember when that landslide happened in Montecito?
I do.
101 was,
Oh, yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
or like when my house burned down in the Woolsey fire. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I went to my warehouse and just had boxes to pack that day, But yeah, I over the years shifted into a model where everything came to the warehouse, but we were dealing with so many different vendors, and it was a very short turnaround because we would have the orders and then a few days later everything had to be packed and delivered.
Yeah, you have fresh food.
Yeah, so it was all quite in real time, and there were always going to be things that would go wrong because it's just a given. So over the years, I just learned, okay, well, what will it be this week? Because you could never know what it was going to be until it happened. And then what I learned is that I could always find a solution. So when we opened up the bag of, the case of grapefruit, and actually it was like, guavas, like, whatever it was, or there's a mudslide and the trucks can't come down because the 101 is shut, or, there's fires or whatever it is. We found a solution every single week for 12 years. And then when the pandemic hit, this was not like a nice manageable growth. This was like, okay, we're here. And then as people started to panic, we're here. And then an article comes out in the New York Times. And of course, I'm there helping pack boxes because suddenly we're so overwhelmed, and then every time I go and I look at I take 5 minutes and I go and look at my computer, there was another, 50 people signed up, and I just had to like shut it down. And we started a waiting list, and we had like 500 people on the waiting list. But the pandemic, in terms of supply chain, wasn't just a numbers game. It was also, you might remember, the supply chain being, you go to the grocery store and there was nothing there.
Right.
And so people were hoarding. They were buying, they were asking for huge amounts of, food because everybody was in panic mode. And nobody really knew how dangerous this was. So it was really scary, particularly as, the responsible party for my team, worrying, everybody is safely at home, but we're there, frontline workers suddenly.
Yeah, exactly.
And then my egg vendor's like, you know what, we can't do the eggs anymore because now instead of needing, 100 dozen, I need 300 dozen. And so the scale wasn't appropriate for that grower anymore. And they wanted to serve their own local community. So they were keeping all the eggs. Eggs were like the toilet paper of the moment. People
really?
Oh my God, it was like insane. But anyway, I somehow was able to navigate this within a lot of very strict parameters that I had to stay within, like, the times that we could use the warehouse, just so many logistical parameters. And eventually we were able to onboard a lot of the people that had been on the waiting list. And it also, we went up, you have to imagine, in the space of maybe 2 or 3 weeks, we trebled, quadrupled, quintupled our volume. Like, how do you do that?
You know what I find interesting about what you're saying, Jennifer, too, is you had, the worst scenario on growth. It wasn't growth, it was just ridiculous. And what you're saying, so many in our audience can benefit from, because all companies have, not like you had, but a series of sporadic growth where they're trying to deal with it. So that's why I find what you're saying so fascinating and beneficial to be heard, because everything you're speaking, somebody in the audience may go through next. I always like to put a little bit of the mental in. How did you deal, Jennifer? What did you find helped you to get up and kind of just calm and go through what you've seen as a very challenging and dynamically changing situation on a daily basis?
I think I still have PTSD.
Yeah.
No, honestly, just thinking about the emotions of that moment, because I was in last position. In a situation like that, particularly in the beginning, we were in a reflexive disaster mode. This was really feeling like almost a question of life and death for some people. This was people begging us to bring them food because they were immunocompromised and they didn't know where to go. This was vendors who were serving restaurants which had shut down, who were serving farmers markets which had shut down. And somehow we were this sort of fulcrum of solutions for people. And I didn't have an option to do anything but just we are in a sort of survival mode right now. And that went on, I would say, for a couple of months, until we sort of, settled. And I tried to bring in reinforcements to support the company. We had packers, we had a consultant to help me with the scaling, we had all sorts of things, but a lot of it was just literally because we would do our production over the weekend. That's when we would do our deliveries. And during the week, it was all the orders and preparing and the spreadsheets and the bill paying. And I was literally, 7 days a week, from dawn till I went to sleep. Just
I can
trying
imagine.
to
And Jennifer, my heart always goes out to the little farmers, as you know. I just have that part in my heart. So I don't know if this is something you can answer or not, but I tend to want to ask this. You being the voice and the spokesperson for the smaller farmers, which we would never hear from right now. We would not. What was the impact of the pandemic and what they were going through? Because I got to believe you're communicating with them. So these have been people you've been communicating. You're hearing a little bit of their dilemmas too. Can you be for a moment just the voice of the small farmers for them? What was their experiences?
Well, everybody was scrambling, and it was scary because anybody let's just say we were on the front lines when you're talking about a food system in a moment of it was an emergency situation, really. And then, for a lot of those people to suddenly have all the crops to harvest and no restaurant to take it to, no farmer's market to take it to.
That's where I'm thinking. That's where I'm getting.
It was really, really challenging. We felt really good because there was one grower in particular, because we were confronted with because we were doing the produce part, but we were also adding all these other elements and creating recipes. And so it would be the produce, but we added on, the meats, the eggs, the grains, and we would create recipes. And normally we would have a long lead time to create those, but now suddenly we don't even know what we're going to get. So we have to create all of this last minute and just figure it out. And but there was one grower in particular who served a lot of very high-end restaurants that had shut down, and we came across a mutual solution because they were able to pack the produce boxes with the produce from
Okay.
their farm. And then we could just add a few things to it, but that took a huge chunk of our workflow out so we could focus on all the other parts. And so they were happy because now they were able to put all those things that they'd grown into a box. But the
Yeah.
thing is, you know, they were pretty chefy. And so, like, I remember there was this crop they have called agretti, which
I
is
don't even
this
know what that
very
is.
strange green, and it almost looks like a succulent from your garden. I mean, it's like a strange green, and it must have been in the boxes for 4 or 5 weeks in a row. And I was just like, oh my God, like, we tried to introduce people to how to use it, but even I was just like, I don't know if I could deal with the credit again, you know.
That's
But
funny.
at that
I
point, it
remember,
was just like,
yeah,
you
I
know, what are
remember
you gonna do?
getting something. I don't remember what it was, but it came in my box and I'd never seen it before because, you know, I didn't grow up in California, so I'm not familiar with everything from here, right? And I remember thinking, what is this? What do I do with this thing? And I had no
Oh my
idea.
God. Yeah. So, you know, over the months, they were able to actually modulate their planting
Okay.
to be more like user friendly to a home chef rather than a restaurant chef. And so that was really the first few months, and then it started to improve. But yeah, it was really a case of us all just trying to support each other, you know. And these are people that I've been, they're like my family. A lot of these growers and makers, there's you know, people we've been buying from for since 2010, you know, many of them.
And that's what I figured you probably felt their pain as well. And I have interviewed many restaurants on the show that talked about how they would order food and then be shut down again. And then they'd have to tell their vendors, no, we don't. And so that's where the question was prompted as well, because I know they were on the other end of it. So here's an interesting thought that I've had. You know, when you're talking about the packaging and the boxes, but there's also, and I'm assuming a whole lot of logistics involved with taking orders, POS systems, credit cards, perhaps, what have you, any infrastructure type aspect, you know, even like keeping a list of where the deliveries need to go. So were there any logistics that you think, my God, I'm so glad I had this at least set up, so when this happened, everything was kind of in place, from writing down processes to using any certain system or technology that you can share with our audience that they can kind of do on a checklist? I may be small now and I may not even use it yet, but let make sure I cross this off my list to be prepared for a situation, if that makes sense what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, we had always been using a very industry specific platform, which had pluses and minuses. So it wasn't a powerful online ordering platform in the way that Shopify is, with so many different apps that you can plug in and cater to your thing. It was really built for this type of home delivery enterprise and understood a lot of the kinds of processes that we had. And so that was very scalable. In terms of the deliveries, it also included, you know, aspects that would handle that, but we weren't actually doing our deliveries in-house anymore. And
Okay.
so we were basically downloading all of the labels with barcodes on them. And then we had sort of couriers that would come, and we knew which car would get which boxes, and they would, you know, get their boxes and off they'd go and deliver them.
You know,
So I did do our deliveries in-house with our refrigerated van for many years, but that really wasn't the most efficient way because we couldn't get the same density as just sending one car to one area and have them do that.
I'm always, in fact, I can't remember whether it was 2 or 3 shows ago, but it's a theme where I talk about having processes in place, even if it's just you, even a written process, because when you have things in place, if you have to ramp up quickly, you have something you can hand off to do an immediate fast training. So it sounds like you had enough processes in place that although it can't be without chaos, you at least were able to get new people on board and get them in place pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of that was good, but as I mentioned, I did have a consultant that came on to help us, who came out of much bigger sort of meal kit
Okay.
companies, and he was able to create the SOPs, the processes on some of the areas where we weren't as explicit, because it was such a small team and we all knew what we were
Right.
doing.
That's the thing I'm getting at, is this is a small team and we all know what we're doing. And that's where I like your SOPs for standard operating protocol. Those are so important, and too many small companies don't even think about it. They don't even consider them, or they think we're too small. And I really, really push people to engage in some kind, even if it's just a little memo, but engage in some kind of SOPs independent of the size of your company, for situations like you're speaking of, and the effectiveness of onboarding even a single person.
And then there's also some platforms that I found really helpful internally for our teams, because we were actually, like, in the way that we had another company doing our deliveries, we also contracted with another company that we hired during that time, another women-owned B Corp, to do our customer service. And so, we're on Slack.
Okay.
We're using Google Docs and the Drive and the
Mhm.
Teams and all of that. And so we were patching together as well various other platforms depending on what it was. So like the SOPs would get into the Drive, and
Yeah.
the orders were in one place, and then Slack, we were communicating with the customer service team, and they were communicating with our production team on Slack. And so we
Perfect,
kind of,
perfect. And I just noticed in the chat, Emma saying she just wrote her SOPs for her outstanding accounts last week. Way to go, Emma. Inspire everybody to get those SOPs. Now, during the pandemic, I had several different clients for different reasons have spike of sales. Even Abby coming on next week with her herbalist, and having types of tinctures that help support the immune system. Hers went through the roof as well.
right.
And I remember speaking to her and others without the ability to do a visionary. It was kind of like a not so great thing, because I could warn them about it, but I couldn't tell them any specifics. And my warning was, we don't know for sure if this sales volume is going to stay at this level. We know it's not going to be this level, but we don't know how far it's going to go down. We don't know if it's going to be a new behavior and you're going to retain those customers, or if you're not. So we got to kind of think that through infrastructure wise. And I would say all this, but at the end of the day, say, well, there's not a really lot we can do, because you got to do the infrastructure to deliver what's now. So just keep it in your back of your mind. And so I felt like a farce, because I knew I was saying things that were true, but I wasn't really able to give any visionary advice. Well, that's exactly what you experienced. So I'm just going to take from my rambling that gave nobody any secure advice to count on. What happened next? Walk us through this, Jennifer.
Well, what happened next was, as I said, we spiked up at about 5x, 5 times our volume within the first couple of weeks. It leveled out to maybe 4, and then sort of remained around 3 times through the pandemic, which was already huge. So like we, in 2020, our sales were at least 3 times what they had been, well, more than 3x altogether.
That's huge.
But I'm not going to say that we were 3x profitable.
Yeah, I get it.
Partly because I was, at that point, I didn't have the time to really plan carefully on how the spending was going to go. I just had to be like, okay, I mean, this month I suddenly have $80,000 this week instead of 10, like whatever, like, okay, we just have to do what it takes. Because as I said, it was more like emergency reflex, like meet the moment. And by the end of it, we were stable. We had the processes in place. We had a flow. But when everything opened up, ole, ole, back to the farmer's market, back to the supermarket.
Oh my God.
And it was also summertime. It was like it really started to hit around June last year, where the volume dropped. Now, I was used to that because every year my volume would drop over the summer, because a lot of my customers are families, and school would get out and they would take the kids and go off to wherever. And by August, people would be back. So I still wasn't sure what that would look like. And what I did know was, well, school's starting again. Finally, kids are going to be back to school in the fall. So I just kind of had to tread water a little bit during the summer. Well,
Right.
what we decided to do during that time, I invested in a parallel website
Right.
for corporate gifting, because that was a avenue that we had always done sort of as a sideline, and I could see the potential for it. So I thought, okay, let's just get this going just in case.
Very good, smart move. And you know what I like to point out on that, and Lauren, maybe put this in the chat somewhere, is that many times, and I tell people this throughout my 30 years of advising, and I even see it in my own company, the time to plan for the next move is when you're doing well in the current one. That's when you got to start asking the questions. What if what's happening now doesn't continue? What else should we be doing to replace it? So often people ride the wave too far down and then get down here and then say, what's next? Where I always say, even from an emotional standpoint, it's a little easier to plan about next when you're feeling positive in current. So I love what you just said, Jennifer, because it brings up a point I don't think I ever said out loud, is that when things are going good, keep your eyes open and look around you as well. Please continue. This is a fascinating story, Jennifer, by the way. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing.
Well,
Please continue.
so we were building that, and it was ready by about October, at which point I could already see that all of those kids and families that I was hoping would come back, I mean, some did, but I was pretty much back to where I had been in my volume pre-pandemic.
Well, that's incredible for planning and trying to survive all the way here and then all the way back down. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. I'm a
Yeah.
finance person, right? So I'm like seeing numbers with your story.
Oh
And
my God, it was really demoralizing,
yeah,
because you would think at least a certain percentage of those people would stick. But I
right.
think people got the sort of cooking burnout
Yeah.
during
I
the
can see that.
pandemic.
And they were excited to go to the farmers. I can remember I did a certain amount of home delivery of groceries, not because I was afraid to go to the grocery store. I was working so much with the SBDC, I didn't have the time. I was the top PPP idle expert, so I was just crazy busy, right? So I started using home delivery just because of time. And then I remember being so happy when I could go to the grocery store and pick my own apple. I just remember thinking that was such a wonderful experience. So I'm sure that although they love the box, the ability to go and do and get what exactly
I get it. I
yeah.
don't blame them. Like, everybody wanted to get out, but
Oh
it wasn't like I could just roll back in time in
no.
terms of my how we were, my costs.
Hmm.
Partly
Exactly.
because I had already, when it happened, I was actually in the middle of doing a crowdfunded equity raise just pre-pandemic, because I needed to scale, because I, after 12 years, was kind of tired of working as hard as I have had to work all these 12 years, and don't pay myself very well, and it just wasn't very healthy for me. It wasn't sustainable for me or the company to be operating at the level that we'd been operating pre-pandemic. And so it was no more sustainable. It was less sustainable because things like my rent had gone up way high. Now I'm using a customer service team. What, do I have to shut all that down and go back to doing all this myself? Like, I was just like, I was exhausted from what we went through during the pandemic. It was probably the most challenging thing I've ever had to lead or do, and I have 3 kids, one of whom is probably the most challenging kid in LA. Luckily he's an adult now, but yeah, I was tired. And so by the end of the year, I just could see, okay, I have a bit, and I got an EIDL loan during the pandemic. And so that's what was covering my losses in last year.
Gotcha. Which you have to pay back still. So yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I still have maybe just enough money to pay everybody off. Right. But I can't continue deepening this deficit. And so I thought to myself, all right, if I stop with home delivery and pivot into the gifting model, I can vastly reduce my costs.
Yeah.
and go into a model which is more focused, and it's all shelf stable products. So I don't have to pay for the cooler and the electricity, and we're not doing a weekly production of all these boxes, and I'm not going to have all the shrinkage of the kale wilting and the moldy strawberries and just all of those things. Fresh food is a really, really challenging business. So I also, because of being B Corp and all of those things, I have relationships in the business world, and I thought this is the gifting thing is much less of a direct to consumer model as a business to business model.
Yeah.
So the idea with the gifting, we, as a B Corp, they have things called IBMs, which are your impact business model. And so for all those years as a B Corp, we were operating under a local business impact model, meaning we were sourcing the majority of everything locally, and we were delivering to almost all local customer base here in LA. So I thought, okay, if we change our model to the gift model with shelf stable things, we can ship those nationally.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot less costs in terms of the fresh food and all of that. And so I shut down the warehouse. I had to lay off my entire team. I actually live in a converted grocery store, ironically. It was like the little bodega of Angelino Heights in Echo Park where I live. And I was like, you know what? I live in a friggin' grocery store. I'm going to bring those shelving units here, put them by the front door. I have like a wall right in front of the front door that looks like a little shop, and behind it is my private life, right?
Oh my God, this story is getting better and better by the moment.
So here I am now in my little converted grocery store with the shelf stable products. And we changed the business, the impact model, into what's called design to give. So now we joined. So we first of all, I should rewind. I should say, so I made that decision over the holidays, Christmas holidays. I was just like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah, I can imagine.
This has been 12 years, because we would always take off 2 weeks. And so those 2 weeks gave me the opportunity to just like sit with it a little bit, because otherwise I'm just in this weekly grind that's unrelenting, and has been unrelenting.
And let's point out, Jennifer, you haven't had an emotional break since you started with the ramp up. I mean, I'm feeling emotional during this conversation, just living it vicariously through you telling the story. So yeah, so
I decided, okay, I'm one of those people, like, I need to do it right. I'm not gonna burn anybody here with this. They're all small makers, small whatever. I'm gonna give my landlord a month's notice. I'm gonna use this month to clear out as much as I can of inventory, give my team the notice, whatever. So I basically made that decision that at the end of January, boom. And so we let all the customers know, this, at the end of January, this is going to be your last delivery. And this is why, and this is what's happened. And it was sad for me, because some of my customers have been there for years. They're like, I feel like, I know they like this kind of honey, and they like, whatever. Yeah. And the incredible thing was that literally 3 hours after I sent out that email, I got an email in from the EIDL, Emergency Disaster Loan, that I'd been approved for another tranche that was an equal amount to the prior tranche.
Yep, I know. I was through that process. I know about that. Yeah,
it was a significant amount, and I was like, "Oh my God, the gods have spoken!" Like, I'm not a religious person, but sometimes things happen, and it was just like, I now have the funding for the pivot, and where I was like, okay, well, if I sell my orange juice machine, I can pay for, because the thing is, when you do this, the bills don't just stop the day you stop. They keep coming. I just got 2 more bills from the fish person saying, oh, there were these 2 outstanding invoices that somehow had never been logged. And, this is 9 months later, right?
I know, I
So,
tell
and
people shutting
and
down.
then like
Go
the
ahead.
taxes, the employee taxes keep all of these bills keep coming. So it was probably in excess of the money that I still had to the side, not hugely, but then suddenly I was like, okay, I don't have to like count every single nickel and dime to exit this thing and stress about it, right? So it was able to help me pivot in terms of both shutting out all of that, and there were a number of things that needed to be done to reorient. And I wanted to keep the customer service team, but they're sort of helping me with some, like, basically I have no employees now, but I'm still contracting with some vendors, mostly other women-owned certified B Corps.
I always tell people that they have to understand shutting something down, whether it's the entire company or just a division or an idea or a concept, is often more work than beginning it because it happens in a smaller time frame than your startup would be. So when you're thinking of going in a new direction, you have to not just close your mind and say, okay, I'm over here now. You have to realize you have energy and money for the closure. And I'm really happy that you brought that up to the conversation, because many people, even today, and I think in the next year, as things have kind of ironed their way through the system, are having to look at options of pivoting, options of maybe shutting down. So what you're saying is real time to a lot of people out there. So I'm glad you're explaining this to them. So now we've got the new direction, just really, I think, just relatively beginning. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Jennifer. I think it's just, starting to catch on. Where are you seeing the company go from here, and what are the takeaways that you have with your new direction?
Well, basically, the big change for me fundamentally is that our customer base is a very different kettle of, it's companies, not individuals.
Right.
So the upside is I can get, yesterday I got a $4,500 order, one order from a company, right? So instead of converting, a customer for a $25 order,
Right.
that investment can be, I, in a way, would prefer to have fewer bigger orders than a gazillion tiny orders, because the work for one big order is almost the same sometimes as
it's so true.
But the pipeline, the time that it takes to convert those companies takes time. And so, I did so my website does sell direct to consumer, but I did a sort of deep dive with a marketing consultant, and we decided that no money would be invested in the direct to consumer piece right now, because I need a much more audience,
right,
to leverage the amount of money that it would cost.
Yeah.
And I just personally do have a reluctance to invest, and I shouldn't be saying this, but I don't want to give money to Facebook, Meta, whatever.
I understand what you're saying, Jennifer, and I feel similar in your opinions, both of being opinions of ours. But aside from the opinions, I have to tell you from my experience, I have seen so many small companies invest so much money in ads in Facebook not to get the sales that they intended.
I've never paid for that kind of advertising ever. Maybe that's why I'm in trouble sometimes. But yeah, so I guess where I am now, it's just heading into the most important season for gifting.
Yep.
Now I'm hoping, because I still have the audience of my direct to consumer people that I email and I still try to engage with, and sometimes they'll place orders, and I'm hoping to see that when it comes time to order their gifts, they'll the one-off gifts are fine. It's just that I don't have budget to invest in increasing that. So
Jennifer,
my
give us
investment,
an idea on, because I want to make sure this is a marketing opportunity too. So if a smaller business is buying for a smaller business, is there a small basket they can buy, or are these more towards bigger businesses with lots of employees?
oh
Tell us
yeah,
a little
so
bit about that so we can get you, some of our audience out there can know this is an option for some of their gift giving with their business associates.
yeah, so what we do is we have a whole bunch, I don't know, 25 or so boxes, gift boxes that we've created that you can just order in the quantity that you need, right? And ship to wherever you want. But our main focus really is what we call custom boxes. And we have on our website under the corporate gifting, there's a button that has our 2022 gift guide. But basically what that does, the minimum is not very big, because to do a custom gift box, we basically want to see an aggregate of about $1,000, which could be 10 $100 gifts or 20 $50 gifts.
Gotcha.
It's not out of the reach of a lot of people, and we curate it specially. So there's a couple of in our gift guide, we walk through the different decisions we want to hear so that we can customize something that is really going to reflect your company culture. And I think right now, in a time where there's so much remote work going on and teams are so separate, company owners have a couple of challenges which are new and which people are trying to figure out. One of those is, how do we keep our teams engaged? How do we express our company culture to our teams, to our clients, to our boards, to all the stakeholders around us, right, in this virtual world? And so, maybe now, sending another branded water bottle for the recipient to put under the sink with all the 15 other branded water bottles isn't really going to deliver that experience that a gift can be. And so we ask, first of all, what type of experience they want it to be. Do they want holiday nibbles? Do they want office snacks? Do they want a small cooking kit or whatever? And then we move on to the impact that they want to see. So we'll go and do you want to support local LA small batch makers? Do you want B Corp products? Do you want women-owned company products, et cetera? And so once we have the parameters of what they want to see, we create that. But we have this really beautiful collateral that goes in the box. And there's an optional ability to donate to a nonprofit that resonates with your company. So, it could be a nonprofit that company already has a relationship with. And they then in the insert, we talk about, we can put a customized message from the company into the collateral that goes into the box, as a message, whatever that message might be, but also, if they've made a donation, outlining that donation and why it was important to the company. And that also serves a purpose of sort of spreading the gospel of that nonprofit, right? So
that's nice. And what I love about it is the customization, because when it comes to gift giving in corporate settings, I'm going to say, it's always a challenge, because you want to have that personal feeling, you want to have that connection, but then you're not like you're buying for your brother or sister, right? So you got to figure out how to do it. And then you end up running to all these different sites and trying to find the right thing for this one and this one. I love the ability that you're able to look at what you're trying to communicate, look at the impact you want to make, and then do the customization. So basically, somebody can come to you and say, here's my long list of people I need to send something to, and they don't have to send the exact same thing. They've got all these different options. I absolutely love that. And thank you, Lauren, for putting the you put the website back into the chat so everybody's seeing your company and your company.
Thank you, Lauren.
Speaking about that,
there's a red button on that page, the custom corporate gift page. There's a little red button that says custom corporate gifts guide. And that takes you into the guide that really walks you through step by step what that can look like. I don't know. We've created gifts for nonprofits as well as for companies to thank volunteers. We've like Action Opportunity Fund, you might be aware of. We did all of the gifts for their staff, but a different gift at a different sort of price point for their board members. And then we were invited to speak to the board because we got our PPP through them. And so they've been sort of following us. So yeah, it's just, I personally create these gifts, and I know so many different cool vendors, and I think essentially part of it is that I'm fundamentally a creative and a lover of beautiful foods and experiences. And so I just want to be able to share something that people are gonna feel something when they receive, and not just be like, okay, yeah, next. You know.
Exactly. I have to tell you a couple things. I'm going to ask you a question, but like I said, I just kind of peek at the chat a bit, and there's been a couple people that said, Jennifer, you need to write a book. There's people, Lauren, she's awesome. She just put the red button link. I've always seen somebody that says, I just created an account. Okay. So you don't know of these things that are happening over here. And I just want to tell you, there's a lot of excitement in the chat going on about you sharing your conversation. So I have, one thing I want to add that I'm touched by, and I want to speak it to the audience on this. So many times I have experienced, and I have been connected to my clients, and so I've experienced it with them. I would say not through them, because I've been, even though it's not me, I felt so connected with everybody that's a business owner. I feel it through them. So you see people go through the best, the worst times, and sometimes a lot of entrepreneurs think, well, if this happened, I could never make it through to the other side. And so I've invited several guests to come back on and talk about situations that happened in the pandemic where they may have lost the company, but then they can see the sparkle and excitement in their eyes as they're talking about what they're doing next. And Jennifer, I just saw the sparkle and excitement in your eyes when you were talking about the corporate and the customization and the gift giving. So to you and our audience, I just want to make sure we stop and recognize that life goes on. And as long as we keep going on and we keep looking for opportunities and we keep being that spirited entrepreneur that we are inside, there's a tomorrow and it's an excitement. To me, there's no beginning or end. I guess I'm going to say one of those old cliches we've heard so much. You're probably going to go, Lori, I can't believe you just said that. But it's the journey. It really is the journey. It's the people we touch. And when we wake up again with that little spark, it's really, really a cool thing to feel. So Jennifer, in our last minutes, tell us, first of all, before I say in our last minutes and ask you that, I just want to stop and say thank you. Thank you for your honesty. You're sharing the story. This has been fascinating, and it's been very thought-provoking, because like I said, even if somebody doesn't go through how you experienced it or to the degree that you experienced it, the growth of a company goes through the elements you talked about. So hearing that and hearing how you handled it was just such a great benefit. So
Just opening the door.
Okay, no worries. No worries. So with that, I just think it was such a great story for everybody to be exposed to and have another wonderful emotion of how somebody handled it. So we got a couple minutes left. Any last things you want to say, thoughts, sharing, anything, Jennifer, that you want to provide for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have two mantras. One of them I think it applies to micro and macro. So the first one is just stay in the solution. There's always a solution. So that can be, from the grapefruits turning out to be guavas to shit. Like, now what am I going to do? Sorry for swearing, but yeah.
Oh,
there's always a solution.
There is.
And I think that's kind of fueled me. And it is amazing. Like, of course, I have moments where I just want to collapse in a puddle, and and then something will happen. And a lot of it, I think for me, a lot of it is I just project the future I want to see, and then try to figure out how to get there and believe in that. And there's a lot of energy in your mind.
I am a firm believer that I started this a long time ago, my little mantra, and I've used it for so long. I even got movements to it, and I remind myself of it all the time. And I say, from the thoughts that I think to the words to how I feel, my thoughts become my destiny. And that's what I really, really believe. And it's at those times you got to hold on to them and let the world just kind of evolve. You take the action. You don't get anywhere if you don't take the action, but you let the mind give you some direction. I love what you just said. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for saying that. Well, it has been another fabulous Small Biz Talk, because of the guests that we come on that share the story. And you in the audience, thank you so much for being here. You've got great, wonderful responses as the chat. Lauren's back with us. I will hand it to you, Lauren. I know the chat was going crazy. And Lauren, thank you so much for being there to put all the links in and getting everybody to Jennifer's webpage and everything. So I just want to say once again, Jennifer, thank you. And I want to say, please come back, and sometime down the road, our show's going, we're not going anywhere. We want to hear how your gift giving side of the business is doing. So we're going to invite you back on to give us an update. I mean, we're engaged in the story. We're going to need an update.
Well, that's why it's called narrative food, because essentially I'm a storyteller.
Exactly. And everybody says you should write a book here. Everybody's saying
I started one. Now if I can just carve out the time.
There you go. There you go. So Lauren, I'm going to hand this back to you to take over from here. Thank you again, Jennifer.
So
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Lori. It's an awesome show. I actually had my son during the pandemic. So had I had known, I was doing like Amazon Fresh, thinking it was fresh. So I'll totally be sharing, spreading the word about narrative food, excuse me. So again, thank you to both of you. Have an amazing rest of the week. And I'll be sending the YouTube link out so that we can review the show. So thank you.
So Lauren, I know you're going to stay behind us a little bit to make up for any kind of comments or questions that they have. So thank you so much. Bye, Jennifer. Bye, guests. Bye, everybody. Thank you for being part of Small Biz Talk. We'll see you next week with another great show. Bye-bye.
Take care now. All right, everyone. Please be sure to refer to the chat for the YouTube link so that you can review this show as well as our others. As Lori mentioned, we have a ton on there. We have, I think today was show 45, super exciting. If you have any residual questions, be sure to reach out. Otherwise, no, I'm sorry, Nancy Lynn, there's no way to save the chat. You can copy and paste, but you can't save it. Sorry about that. Let's see if anything. Yeah, thanks, Terrence. 45 shows, it's insane. But again, thank you so much to our frequent flyers for reaching out to us and just coming to our show on a weekly basis. And hopefully we'll see you next week for another episode, Small Biz Talk. Solutions for your small business. Nancy Lynn, I'm looking in the chat. Annie says you can do a screenshot, and that's a great suggestion. If you can't copy and paste, go ahead and do a screenshot. All right, everyone, take care. Have a wonderful remainder of the week, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.